Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bruce Bongarten, and I'm the provost of the SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry. I would like to thank everyone for being here today and welcome Governor Cuomo to our school. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge a few other special guests who are joining us. First, Onondaga County Executive Joni Mahoney. Welcome. And Syracuse Mayor Stephanie Miner. Welcome, Mayor. Syracuse Common Council President Van Robinson. Welcome. Center State CEO, President, and Central New York Regional Economic Development Council Co-Chair Rob Simpson. Welcome, Rob. My former boss and former SUNY ESF President Neil Murphy. Welcome, Neil. And a special welcome to all the other distinguished officials and guests who have joined us here today. Last month, the governor outlined a series of proposals for the coming year in his 2015 State of Opportunity Address. We're excited to have the governor here to present these ideas to our community and to the people of Central New York and Syracuse. We've seen here in Central New York new growth through the state's innovative approach to economic development, which encourages schools to become more involved as economic engines for their communities. SUNY ESF has been eager to partner with the governor's Central New York Regional Economic Development Council and Startup New York program to attract jobs and new investments to this region. Continued investment in local projects is bringing hundreds of jobs to the area, putting residents to work and giving Central New York the vibrancy it needs to move forward. Governor, we are grateful for your ongoing support, and we look forward to hearing from you today. It is now my pleasure to introduce Assemblyman Bill Magnarelli. Bill?
Thank you, Provost. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. I would like to acknowledge my colleagues who have joined us today, Assemblyman Sturpey and Assemblyman Roberts. Thank you for being here. And it's always great to welcome the governor to Syracuse, and especially to my district again. Thank you very much, Governor. Today we look forward to hearing from the governor, about the governor's proposals for the 2015 legislative session. We've made a lot of progress in Central New York. We've focused on jobs. I want to take this opportunity to thank Governor Cuomo, particularly for his regional economic development councils, which are regionally based and decide on economic development projects that are goal-oriented toward creating jobs. I'm proud to be a member of our regional economic development council. It's important to not acknowledge and highlight the incredible work of the members of the Central New York Council. How we have been able to transform Central New York from the Inner Harbor to St. Joseph's Hospital. Governor Cuomo just announced the fourth round of funding totaling $80.2 million in economic development aid. And we can boast a little bit here. Adding this round to the previous three rounds, the Central New York region's total funding to date is $344.6 million, which is the highest in the state for the last 4 years. So again, thank you, Governor Cuomo. I'm proud to continue to work with you on these projects, and I'm sure my colleagues are the same, and we want to keep the momentum going for 2015. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Senator David Valesky.
Thank you very much, Assemblyman Magnarelli. I also want to acknowledge the presence with us today of Kent Siverud, the Syracuse University Chancellor and co-president of the Central New York Regional Economic Development Council. I'm also very happy to be here with my Chancellor deserves that round of applause, especially after that big comeback last night, right? I'm very happy to be here today and to hear from the governor and welcome him here to Syracuse and Central New York. 2 weeks ago in Albany, the governor laid out his agenda. It addressed a number of important issues affecting the state and this region. That agenda addresses issues that are important to New Yorkers and important to keeping our state moving forward, including reducing property taxes, creating new jobs, and rebuilding our infrastructure. In addition, the agenda maintains the fiscal responsibility that we have come to expect, holding the line on state spending. Further, I'm pleased and excited about the governor's plans to continue the state's focus on rebuilding the upstate economy. This is where the help is needed most, and our efforts and work have begun to make a real difference that you can see across this city and across this region. Over the past 4 years, government has worked and worked for the people. Governor, we look forward to continuing to keeping that momentum going this year. This time I'd like to introduce the governor of the great state of New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. And good afternoon to you today. It's my pleasure to be back in Syracuse. It's my pleasure to be back at ESF. It is a great organization, and let's give the provost a big round of applause, and thank you for having us. You have two great co-chairs of the Regional Economic Development Council, and I've been working with Rob Simpson and pleased to work now with Chancellor Seberud on the Regional Economic Development Council, which is doing really great work. Big winner, as you heard from Assemblyman Magnarelli. 300 and how many million was that? 344, but who's counting? And it's tax-free. But they've been doing a great job, so it's a pleasure to be with them. To my colleagues from Albany, Assemblyman Bill Magnarelli, who's been a great friend for a lot of years, and he's what public service is supposed to be about. Let's give him a round of applause. Assemblyman Al Sturpey with a little facial hair, looks good. I like it, sophisticated. Assemblyman Sam Roberts, who I love. Sam is the best sport as Assemblyman. He comes to all the different activities all around the state when we do tourism activities. He's always there supporting his colleagues. Sam Roberts, let's give him a round of applause. And Senator Dave Valesky, who has done an extraordinary job in the Senate. And the Senate, over the past couple of years, has been a little bit more of a complicated equation than most, and the senator has always been there, not just for his district, but really a leader for the entire state. Senator Valesky, pleasure to be with you. And Mayor Stephanie Miner, pleasure to be with you again, Stephanie. And County Executive Joni Mahoney, who was just in Albany yesterday at the meeting of the annual county executives. Thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause. What I want to talk to you about today is a little bit different. As you heard from Senator Valesky, we outlined a plan in Albany a couple of weeks ago, but it's a somewhat different plan. What normally happens is the governor does a state of the state in the beginning of the year, and then a few weeks later submits a budget. State of the state, the president does the State of the Union address, the mayor will do the state of the city, state of the county. It's a thematic, broad picture of what the themes are. And then a few weeks later, you get the budget that has the actual details. What happened this year was the legislature was gracious enough to postpone the State of the State because my father passed away in the beginning of the year, and the State of the State was supposed to be right after that. So they were gracious enough to move the State of the State later. I then had tremendous guilt because if my father ever knew He was the reason to slow down government. I would have a real problem. So I moved up the budget. So we actually moved along faster than ever before, and we put the state of the state and the budget together in one document. And it saved time, and it actually makes more sense. And this is what I presented to the legislature a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to be discussing it over the next couple of months. But your voice and your opinion and what you think, frankly, matters more than anything else. And that's why I wanted you to hear it from me. We call it the opportunity agenda, and we start by taking stock of where we are, state of the state, what is the basic condition of where we are. I think it's inarguable, but that over the past 4 years, the state has made good progress. You look at any of the categories, from unemployment has gone from 8.9 to 5.8%. We had low credit ratings. Now we have the highest credit ratings in 40 years by all three agencies. Upstate was going through a period of decay, and now you see rebuilding all across upstate New York. Taxes and spending, we're going up, and up every year. We've actually reversed that, and taxes and spending are cut to their lowest rate in 50 years. Property taxes, which is the most oppressive tax in the state of New York, was going up 6% every year on average. We have now actually capped the growth at 2% and then actually froze the growth. Every paper, every objective analysis will say we're moving the state forward, and it's more of a state of opportunity, and we want to go even higher this year. Rather than focus on 100 different things, I'm not that smart, so I focus on fewer, more important, but actually want to get some things done. And the four most important areas: economic opportunity, education, public safety, and ethics. On economic opportunity, the train that makes the whole thing work, the engine, is business. Why? Because if jobs are coming into Syracuse, then there's opportunity for people. Then there's revenues for the mayor. Then there's revenues for the county executive. Then there's hope and there's energy. If you're losing jobs, there's almost nothing that you can do to fix that. So you have to start with a real economic development program that's developing jobs. And we have been, over the past 4 years, 500,000 new jobs. So we're doing something right. First, we want to build on what we have been doing that has been working. And what's been working is cutting taxes. And we have been cutting taxes in this state because that is the number one negative that brought us to where we are. The reputation that New York is the high-tax state. New York is the anti-business state. And if you want a job, you have to go somewhere else. And the economic future was somewhere else. We have turned that around. In perception, because we turned it around in reality. We exercised fiscal discipline, we spent less money, and we were able to cut taxes. This chart is fascinating to me. I'm not a big statistics person. 50 years, past 50 years, the state government spent at a higher rate than the people in the state were actually earning. Think about that. Theoretically, you're not supposed to be able to spend more than you make. We did. I don't know how we did it, but we did. And not just for a short period of time, 50 years. State spending was going up 6.8%. Income was only going up 6.2%. So when people said the state is taking a bigger and bigger piece of my income, the state is putting their hand deeper and deeper into my pocket, that's because we were. When they say high tax capital, they're not making it up. That's what we were doing to people. And the basic rule is you can't spend more money than you make. And the state government can't be spending more money than the people in the state have been making. We totally reversed that. We went from an average of 6.8% additional spending every year to 1.3% average for 4 years. When you have that differential, it then frees up money. And what we did with that funding is we did tax cuts. And we did big tax cuts. Middle class, lowest middle class tax rate since 1953. I wasn't even born yet. That's a long time. Lowest corporate income tax since 1968, lowest manufacturing tax rate since 1917, because we're trying to get manufacturers to come back to New York. So when we say we change the perception, we change the reality. And that's why the perception changed. And these were not little marginal cuts. These were making a big difference. The first thing we have to do this year is maintain that fiscal discipline. Now, you know, you can lose 5 pounds of weight because you're disciplined and you exercise and you lose 5 pounds. Yeah, but now every time you sit at the table, you have to exercise that same discipline, otherwise you'll find that 5 pounds and more very quickly. We've been very good at spending less than 2%, and we've done it for 4 years, but we have to do it for this year also. And that is what's been driving our recovery. And I believe we're going to do it. This year, we want to propose a small business tax cut. Why? Because small business is where all the new job growth is coming from. And the small businesses are the businesses that are struggling in the state right now. Currently, the small business tax rate is 6.5%. We want to bring it down to 2.5%, which would be the lowest tax rate in 100 years. And that would be a very powerful signal. Second area where we want to cut taxes is property taxes. The property taxes in New York are among the highest in the country. It's a problem on Long Island, it's a problem in the northern suburbs, and especially in upstate New York. You know where property taxes are not a problem? New York City. Property taxes in New York City are relatively low. That's why you never read about it in the New York City papers. Believe me, if they had the property taxes that you have, you'd be reading about it in the New York City papers. It's one of the reasons it's been allowed to go on that long. 2011, we capped property taxes at a 2% cap. Next year, we froze it to 0. It was the first time in modern history that property taxes didn't go up. This year, we want to actually cut property taxes. We want to take $1.7 billion from the budget. We want to send it back to homeowners in the state, which would be about 1.3 million homeowners get a rebate of $1,000 per year. You get a check for $1,000, that actually means something. And it's going to make a difference to 1.3 million homeowners in the state of New York. We also want to extend rental relief to over 1 million renters. Point 2, you want to build the economy and keep the economy building, we have to keep renewing our infrastructure. And the infrastructure of today is not like the infrastructure of yesterday. Eisenhower in 1950, President Eisenhower built a highway system. And he said, we need the highway grid, and if we have the transportation highway grid, business will come. The grid going forward is not the highway grid, it's an electronic grid. And it's internet and it's broadband. You will not be competitive if you don't have access to broadband. 4, 5, 6 years, a business will not be able to be in a location that does not have broadband. A person will not want to live in a place that doesn't have access to broadband. I believe that. And if you look at New York State right now, there are big pieces of New York that have no access to high-speed broadband. Why? Because the private sector companies don't want to place broadband where they don't have high density. Their profit comes from number of households per mile. So they like to put the broadband in cities. The more concentration, the more money they make. It's not cost-effective for them to put it in suburban and rural communities. So you look at that map, all the orange are places without access to high-speed broadband. It tends to be upstate New York, and it tends to be the poorer communities in downstate New York. Those are the exact places where we actually need the access to the broadband. So what we're going to do is partner with the private sector companies that we regulate It's roughly a $1 billion project. The state will pay half, the private sector companies will pay half, and by 2018, we will have high-speed broadband all across the state of New York. I believe we're going to be the first state in the country to have it. And I think it's going to be a tremendous economic opportunity for this state going forward. Part of what we've done over the past 4 years is we have focused on upstate New York like no administration in history. And what has happened to upstate New York in the past is important. And I think it's important to be candid about it so we make sure it never happens again. Upstate New York went through an economic transformation, which had nothing to do with anybody's fault. It was just a different economy. We moved from a manufacturing economy to high tech. Jobs moved overseas. So we started to lose economic power. When you start to lose economic power, we started to lose people. And people started to follow the jobs, and the population of upstate reduced. The population of upstate cities reduced. You lose people, you lose political power. You lose political power, you lose government attention. You lose government attention, you lose government assistance, now you lose more economic power, and now you are on a downward cycle. And that's what happened to upstate New York, not for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, 30, 40, 50 years. And the government in Albany, and I say this, and my colleagues will back me up quietly when there's no newspaper reporter and no camera. The government in Albany did not focus the way it should on upstate New York. The focus became downstate New York. That's where the energy was. That's where people were moving. That's where the economy was booming. New York City, downstate, Long Island, that's what got the attention. Upstate New York, the only other city that got attention was Albany. Why? The head of the Senate was Joe Bruno from Albany. And Albany got attention. Albany has had a phenomenal economic transformation. It is the nanotech capital of the world. It is an international economic phenomenon. And people say, wow, it just happened. Albany one day was a capital and the next day was the nanotech capital. No. God didn't say, you shall be a nanotech capital. It didn't just happen. The state invested billions and billions and billions of dollars in Albany. Billions. Worth every penny, built a whole new economy. But it was that government attention that made it happen. Buffalo didn't get it. Rochester didn't get it. Syracuse didn't get it. Utica didn't get it. But Albany did. It was a fundamental failure of government. We came in with the exact opposite orientation, understanding what happened. And we prioritized the exact opposite. We have worked harder in upstate New York than we have in downstate New York. And the proudest product and evidence is when you look at the job growth now, where historically you would see it big in downstate and slow in upstate, you look at the drop in unemployment, it's fairly equal all across the state. It's not that Manhattan did well and Long Island did well and upstate suffered. And this is economic growth, and this is fair economic growth. And this is working with upstate New York that for a long time lagged the growth of downstate, and now you're actually seeing an equalization. The regional economic development councils are a totally different way of doing economics and doing business. We actually put the region in charge. We actually put businessmen in charge. We actually incentivized people to come together rather than compete. We incentivized people to collaborate, local politicians, business, academics, et cetera. And your Regional Economic Development Council is doing great, and that's why everyone's smiling. Rob is smiling because he got the check, and Max is smiling, and Senator DeFrancisco is smiling because he's standing next to Maria Bartiromo. But otherwise, it is going great guns all across the board. We then went to Buffalo, and we said to Buffalo, we are going to try something different in Buffalo. And we invested $1 billion in Buffalo. Why Buffalo? Because Buffalo, on the numbers, was the most depressed city and region in the state, and it wasn't even close, on the numbers. And also, if we could turn around the economy in Buffalo, we'll change the words to the song a little bit, you can turn around the economy anywhere if you can turn around Buffalo. Buffalo was the most depressed on every index, including their own belief of their economic future. Buffalo had seen 50 years of decline. And we promised the Buffalo billion. Why $1 billion? Because they were so skeptical and so cynical, and they had heard everything before. I wanted something that would actually get their attention and shake them up so that they could think, you know what, maybe this is going to be different. And Buffalo, in 4 years, is a different city. And it is a different region. Now, the Buffalo billion, Buffalo's only spent about 500 million of the billion, because it really wasn't about the billion. It was about the organizing and the stimulating. We want to take that model and we want to replicate it across the state. We want to have 3 competitions for 3 winners, 500 each, and that's going to be the next round of REDC competitions. So you'll be able to compete for a really significant plan of a $500 million infusion of capital, as well as the rest of the REDC awards. And if it is true, if we could do what we did in Buffalo in 4 years, just imagine what we can do in Syracuse and Central New York. We have Startup New York. That is a program I am very excited about. You heard the provost talk about it. Where are new jobs coming from? Small business. Where else? They're coming from institutions of higher learning. They are the Silicon Valley model, where institutions of higher learning are creating the new ideas, the patent, the copyright, they get commercialized, and they gestate in that incubator of that university. Startup project says we're going to have a geographic zone next to the major universities and every SUNY that is a 100% tax-free zone. No sales tax, no property tax, not for the employer, not for the employee, for 10 years. So when those new businesses start, the best place for them to stay is right there next to that university. We are now creating the jobs in New York. Why? Because we have the schools. We have the best schools in the country. So we're getting the best students, we're getting the best ideas, and we are birthing the idea. But then they leave. Why? Because investment capital comes in and they say, we want to move you from New York because it's too expensive. We want to take you to Texas, we want to take you to Florida. Startup Zone says, stay right here, because these are the cheapest taxes in the country. People say, well, Florida, zero income tax. Texas, zero income tax. The least expensive place to start a business in the United States of America, state of New York, in a startup zone next to a SUNY campus like ESF. It has to work. We just have to keep it going, and we need the schools to partner with it. The State Fair draws nearly 1 million people a year. It is a great institution. I go every year. The county executive has been bending my ear about the State Fair. The truth is, it hasn't had the investment that it deserves. The truth is, it hasn't had the modernization that it deserves. We want to change that. We want to invest in the state fair, make it a year-round enterprise, a year-round venue, and an economic engine for the entire region. And I want to invest $50 million in the state fair to do just that, which is a significant amount of money, but I believe it's worth it because I believe we'll make an economic engine out of it. We also want to invest in the upstate economy with $65 million in port and rail hubs and improvements. It's still about moving goods in upstate New York, and you have to update that infrastructure. Port of Oswego, Syracuse Rail Yard are among them, but continuing to keep our infrastructure in shape. We're talking about economic recovery. It's important to me, ideologically, philosophically, that everyone on the economic scale does well. And for too many years, we've been passing by people on the bottom of the economic scale. And that's not true economic recovery. We raised the minimum wage in New York a couple of years ago. The economy's gotten better. And in truth, even without raising the minimum wage, I still think it's too low. Remember what the minimum wage is supposed to do. You're supposed to be able to work full-time at a minimum wage and support your family, pay rent, pay food, and live outside of poverty. You can't do that yet in New York. We want to raise the wage to $10.50, which I think is sustainable. I also think it's honorable. It would be the highest statewide minimum wage rate in the country. But the economy's going well. Let's make it work for everyone. Education reform in New York, I think, is probably the most desperate need. It's something we've talked about for many, many years, but in truth, we just haven't done it. Politically, it's a very difficult topic, education. You're talking about powerful interests. You're talking about powerful unions. And for one reason or another, we haven't made real changes to the system. We want to recruit the best teachers, we want to close failing schools, and we want to invest in early childhood. To recruit the best teachers, we want to do something we've never done before. We'll say to new teachers, we will pay your college tuition at a SUNY or a CUNY school if you are a top graduate and you will give us 5 years as a teacher. Like a Peace Corps for teachers. We'll pay your college. You give us 5 years to teach, and you earn your salary for teaching. But if we're serious about investing in education and getting good teachers into education, this is how you do it, and I'm prepared to do it this year. For existing teachers, we need real teacher evaluations. We started them a few years ago in the state of New York. They're not working as well as they should, but we need a real teacher evaluation. Every education expert in the country will agree that the education reform is an evaluation for a teacher that actually works. If you have an evaluation for a teacher, you know what teachers are doing well, you know what teachers need help. You know what classes are doing well, you know what schools are doing well. Without evaluations, there's no way to measure, there's no way to gauge. We want to incentivize high teaching performers and get the teachers who need help, help. But you have to have an evaluation that is actually fair and accurate. Right now, 38% of our high school students are college ready. 98% of our high school teachers are rated effective on the evaluations. It cannot be. You can't have 38% of the high school students college ready, but 98% of the students being effective. 3rd to 8th graders, statewide, 31% are proficient, but 99% of the teachers are rated excellent. 35% of the 3rd to 8th graders proficient in math, 98% of the teachers are rated effective. It just cannot be. It's just not accurate. The problem is clear and the solution is clear. We need real, accurate, fair teacher evaluations. And once we have a fair teacher evaluation system, we can incentivize performance State will pay a $20,000 bonus to highly effective teachers and make them what we call master teachers to mentor the other teachers. So once we have a fair evaluation system, incentivize people to do well, and incentivize teachers who work hard and put in the time, on top of their salary, a $20,000 bonus, and let them help be mentors to the other teachers. For the teachers, who are in the middle, we'll develop teacher improvement plans. And the state will pay to get them counseling, to get them help to improve their scores to do better. For the teachers who are chronically ineffective, which means they were developing, we got them assistance, we got them counseling, and they are still ineffective. And they are ineffective for a number of years. Then we have to have the strength to say to these teachers, maybe you should try something else. And we like you, and we tried, but it's not working. And by the way, this is about educating the students. And if a teacher isn't working for the students, then it's not working. We have a current system to fire a teacher is called the 30-20A system. It is so hard to fire a teacher that a district will tell you they won't even try. We have teachers in this state who have assaulted students, and we can't get them out of the classroom. I understand teacher protection, but I also understand student protection. And I think we've gone too far the other way. Now, the teachers union says, I'm mean to teachers. I'm not mean to teachers. I love teachers. I truly do. I respect teachers. My mother was a teacher. She taught 2nd and 4th grade. My mother now does mentoring. She does mentoring internationally. I believe in respecting the profession. But we fund education not to hire and protect teachers. We fund education to educate students. And when the teacher's interest is advanced at the cost of the student, that is a problem. And what has been happening is, the teachers' union is so powerful, and frankly, so powerful in Albany, that the state government has been more responsive to the needs of the teachers' union than it has been responsive to the students. And I'm ashamed to say that, but that is the truth. We have failing schools in this state where half the children graduate. 9 out of 10 kids in the failing schools are minority or are poor. 178 failing schools, 77 have been failing for 10 years. 250,000 students went through those failing schools. Just think about that. 10 years. You knew the school was failing. You knew the likelihood that if you sent a student to the school, they were going to fail. They were poor. They were minority. They needed the education. And 250,000 students were, in essence, condemned to go to failing schools. Why? Because we didn't want to make the change. Why? Because it was too hard to make the change. Well, you know what? This is about the students, and this is about the kids. And it's not about the unions, and it's not about the political contribution, and it's not about the political donation, and it's about standing up and doing the right thing and doing what you were elected for, which is to help the kids and do the right thing. We want to say when a school fails for 3 years, try a different management plan. A not-for-profit, mayoral control, the state will take it over. Do something different. The old expression, insanity, is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. Syracuse has schools that have been failing for 10 years. What makes you think it's going to be any different? 24,000 students in Syracuse have been sent to failing schools. And you just keep repeating it and repeating it and repeating it. And we're going to do it again next year. And then politicians will get up and give a speech. I care about the kids. Oh, really? then do something if you care about the kids. Do something that makes you politically uncomfortable, but actually serves the need and the rhetoric that you've spewed. That's the acknowledgement that we have to make. We believe charter schools are a viable option. We would have a preference for children from failing schools to go to charter schools as an alternative. We would also pass a regulation that says charter schools can't, quote unquote, cream. There's an allegation that charter schools take the best students. We'll say that charter schools have to accept public students at the same proportion and ratio of any public school in the district, so they can't, quote unquote, cream. We also support an education tax credit, which would give support to private parochial schools, and I support passing the DREAM Act, which would give scholarship assistance to the children of immigrant families. We want to invest in early education. We started universal pre-K for 4-year-olds. We want to finish funding this all across the state. Every expert will tell you the sooner you get the kid in school, the growth potential is highest when they're youngest, and universal 4-year-old pre-K is our goal. We want to take the next step, which is we want to start pre-K for 3-year-olds and start designing that program. We'd be one of the first states in the country to start 3-year-old pre-K. But it's also where we can make the most progress. Now, this is a bold reform agenda. It's going to challenge the status quo. I understand it's going to be difficult, so this is what I'm going to say to the legislature. The current budget that we agreed to last year would have our education budget go up 1.7% this year. That's by the budget and the law that we agreed to last year, 1.7%, which is just under 2%, but it's what we agreed to in the law. If the legislature agrees to these reforms, and will do the closing of the failing schools, teacher evaluation, et cetera, and really reform the education system, I would support funding an additional $1 billion for a 4.8% increase in education, which would literally be a jet engine on this transformation plan. You give us these laws, I'll get us this funding, we'll transform the public education system overnight. In the area of public safety, there is a quiet scandal that is going on in this nation, which is the sexual abuse of young women, especially on college campuses. New York has the most colleges under investigation for this, but it is a nationwide problem and it's only getting worse and worse. Last fall, we adopted a policy at our state schools that called for 2 things. Number 1, what they call affirmative consent. Both parties to a sexual relationship must affirmatively consent. And number 2, if a woman believes she was a victim of a sexual assault, she has to be informed of her right to go to the police. What is happening is when there are accusations of sexual assault on campuses, the tendency by the campus is to keep it as a private matter. Why? The campus, the school, doesn't want the notoriety, they don't want the press, they don't want it in the newspaper, it's bad for the reputation. So they'll talk to the woman will make the complaint, they'll then talk to the man or boy will have a different story. The campus will say to the woman, well, you know, there's really 2 stories here, maybe we just handle it as a private matter. It's not a private matter. The woman did nothing wrong. Rape is a crime. It's not a violation of school policy. It's not a campus security measure. It is a police measure. Because we're not treating it as a crime and doing the investigation, you have a very high level of recidivism. So 4% of the males are committing 90% of the rapes. Why? Because we're never catching them and convicting them and putting them in jail because we're handling it as a school matter rather than a criminal justice matter. We want to inform every woman when she comes in, like they have Miranda rights, here are your rights. You can talk to the campus security, or you can go to the local police department, or you can go to the state police, and here's their phone number, and treat it like the crime it is, and let that woman know that she is the victim, and she did nothing wrong, and let's prosecute the person who committed the crime so it stops once and for all. I want to pass this law in the state of New York and have it apply to every school. Extreme weather is the new normal, as we all know too well. We want to have a new software system, a new training system for emergency management because it's getting serious. We want to spend $50 million to buy the state-of-the-art snow removal equipment and plows. We had 7 feet of snow in Buffalo a few weeks ago. I had to call up everyone I knew and borrow their plows. We brought plows to Buffalo from literally Suffolk. Last week, New York City was supposed to have a storm. I called Buffalo and had the plows sent down to New York City. The thruway is all plows going back and forth. I want to spend $50 million. I want to buy the right equipment because it's serious. This year, we're going to be finishing installing the most sophisticated weather detection system in the country, because detecting weather is not just a comfort anymore. It's not whether or not you bring an umbrella. It now is the deployment of resources and personnel, and if you get the weather wrong, you could lose people's lives literally. So that will finish this year. And the last point of the plan is ethics reform. And this is probably the most difficult in some ways. Over the past 4 years, I feel very good about what we've accomplished and what we are getting done. And I've had a very collegial relationship with the legislature, and I worked very hard on my relationship with the legislature, Assembly and Senate, Democrats and Republicans. And we've gotten 4 budgets passed on time in a row. Hasn't happened in 40 years, not since Nelson Rockefeller. And we're passing laws, and it's working. And it's been great. But there's been a shadow over everything we've done. And for all the good work, there is still a question mark. And the question mark is what's apparently a constant string of scandals and headlines that talk about unethical activity in Albany. And as much progress as we've made, and as many good things as we've done, there is still this feeling that there's corruption and scandals in Albany. And it doesn't stop, and we pass ethics reform, and it happens again, and we pass ethics reform, and it happens again. This year, it has to stop once and for all. And we have to be able to say to the people of the state, we passed a Clean Up Albany plan that is really going to make a difference. And it's about campaign finance disclosure. It's about pension forfeiture. If a politician gets convicted of a public corruption crime, he should lose or she should lose their pension because the taxpayers shouldn't pay for their retirement. It's about reducing per diem so people only really get the cost of a per diem. It's about using campaign funds for campaigns and what I call ultimate disclosure. And ultimate disclosure is this. The crux of the problem in Albany is we have part-time legislators. We have a citizen legislature. And the idea was they work part-time as a legislature, and then they go home to their community, to their real life, and they work part-time. That was the idea. And at one time, it made a lot of sense. You worked in government, then you went back to the farm, and we were an agrarian society. What's happening now is a legislator gets paid part-time as a legislator, in the assembly, $79,000, and then they go home and they have a private business. And you don't know who pays them in their private business, and who are the clients in the private business. And the constant question is, are they representing me, or are they representing their client in the private business? And then you see cases like we just saw the past couple of weeks ago, where the clients that the assemblyman had were clearly posing a conflict. And by the way, the matters that the legislature handles now, that I handle now, they are so complex and they have so many ramifications for so many businesses, it's hard to find clients where there's not some conflict. So I said, look, the only way to resolve this is there's two options. A, you're a full-time legislator and no outside business. And I would be in favor of raising the salary, make it a full-time job, say to the people of the state, that's all I do, I represent you, I don't make any other money, I don't have any other client. That's option A. Legislature doesn't like that because they say that's not what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be part-time citizen legislatures. Okay. Option B, disclose everything. Disclose who your clients are, disclose your income, disclose what they paid you and why they paid you, and if it had any connection with your public duties. If you're not doing anything you're ashamed of, then tell me what you're doing. Because this is about trust. Because this is about trust. That's what it's about now. It's about restoring the trust. And unless you are willing to communicate fully, you're never going to restore the trust. And if we don't have trust, then this is not really going to work the way it could work. And we have great potential in this relationship, this government-citizen relationship. And we're functioning and we're working and we're doing good stuff. But without trust, we really can't get to the maximum actuality of the relationship. And that's what I want to fix this year. And I said to the legislature, look, we got 4 budgets on time in a row. I would love this to be the 5th on-time budget. I would love it. 5 is my lucky number. I'd love to say 5 on-time budgets. But it's more important to me to get this trust established and get ethics reform than just to get another budget done on time. And if I don't have an ethics package as part of that budget, I've told the legislature I'm not signing that budget. And we're not going to have a budget until we have ethics reform, and I can come back here and look you in the eye and say, you should trust that government in Albany because that government came clean. That's more important than anything else. We get this done, what will we have accomplished? We will have lowered taxes in the state, again, for the 5th year. We'll have more jobs coming to the state. We'll have transformed public education. The state will be safer and fairer with that sexual assault law. The government will have more transparency with the ethics. Now, this is a difficult agenda because it's a lot of change, and change is hard. You know, change is an interesting concept. We all like change conceptually. You know, the married couple at the breakfast table, sitting across from each other at the breakfast table. One says to the other, you know, we need change. Yeah, they mean you need to change, right? They're doing just fine. You are the problem. We like consistency. Change is hard, and dramatic change is really hard. This is dramatic change for a lot of people. This is taking on the special interests in Albany. This is taking on the culture that has made Albany the way it is. And this is asking the legislature to really step up in a big way. And it's going to be hard. Now, I've asked them. I've asked them publicly, I've asked them privately, I've asked them in letters, I've asked them in Christmas cards. More than me asking them, I need you to ask them. Because your voice matters more. Because they represent you. And what you think actually matters. I need you to get involved in this crusade. I need you to make your voice heard. If you speak up, we'll get this plan done. And look at what we've done over just the past 4 years. 4 years sounds like a long time. It's nothing. It's a moment, 4 years. And in 4 years, we've made phenomenal progress in upstate New York. After 50 years of decline, we turned the arrows around, and and we're headed the other way. We get this done, you ain't seen nothing yet. We're going to take this state and we're going to take Syracuse and Central New York to a place it's never been. Central New York is doing great. It's going to do even better. We get this plan passed, the sky is the limit. Thank you and God bless you.